so talent is scarce. I think that's a false statement. So what I kind of like think about is like talent is not scarce, opportunity is. Like I think there's a lot of potential in the world that can kind of make the world incredible, but I think not a lot of that potential gets the opportunity.
Hi everyone, welcome to Journey of the Unordinary, a podcast where we will carry out intimate conversations with our guests to learn about their journeys to where they are today. In each episode, we'll cover where they grew up, what are some pivotal moments in their life, and their approach in life in general. I'm Jackie, a Chinese-born New York City living girl who's perpetually on a hunt for her childhood hometown food from Kunming.
And I'm Chuxing, a Chinese-born Sydney living girl who loves exploring life and making meaningful connections. In this season, we bring you 10 episodes of 10 guests centered around tech and data. Join us to uncover their unique paths of these beautiful, unordinary people. Find a piece of yourself in their stories and let their adventure inspire your own.
Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of Journey of the Unordinary. So today we're super excited to welcome our guest. Drumroll please, Binji.
Hey, Binji. Binji is my colleague at OP Labs, and it's truly an honor to work with him. Every morning when I wake up, I'll see Binji's messages on Twitter, on Slack, and everywhere. And also, I got super inspired by his work.
Yay!
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So for those who don't know you yet, can you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Binji. I currently work at OP Labs. I am moving into like working on the consumer side for OP Labs. But beyond that, as a human, I was born in Nepal to two lovely parents and lived there for the first 15 years of my life. Was then at 15 went to Costa Rica, where I went to this boarding school, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about as well. That really shaped me, honestly. And then went to Chicago for college near Chicago. Studied like economics, cognitive science, and a little bit of design. Ended up doing like wanted to be a product manager, so I had a stint at Coinbase. Just super got to meet really cool people there, and just thought like, oh, I kind of really like these foundational concepts of crypto. I really feel like a lot of my life has somehow led up to it. Weirdly enough, like not directly, but indirectly. And I was like, I want to go in, I want to go deeper. And then discovered like optimism through this concept of like retroactive public goods funding, which was an article written and a Medium post that I stumbled on and was like, oh, I have to work there. It worked out and have been at OP Labs doing a bunch of different things for the past year and a half, I think now. But yeah, I live in New York City. I live here with two roommates. And yeah, my favorite food is Nepalese food, where I'm from. Definitely biased. But
There's so many questions I feel like we can ask from here.
I can fun fact actually, because this is like my favorite thing. Because you know when you're like meeting new people in this group setting, and there's always like an icebreaker exercise, and it's always like, "What's your name? Where are you from? What's your fun fact?" And a lot of people find that like excruciating because it's like, "Damn, that's a fun fact." For me, I have a really good time with it because my fun fact is really easy and it's relatively weird. But I have this thing called situs inversus totalis, which basically means all of my organs are on the opposite side. So that's my fact. And my mom's been telling me tattoo.
Wait, all of your organs on the opposite side. Like, does it make you do something more inconvenient, or it's just like it happens and like everything is fine?
I think it makes my personality the way it is. That's probably no physical health things.
Oh, wow. Wow, I didn't know that at all.
Like, I guess you knew this as a kid already, like growing up, like, okay, you always knew that you had, okay.
When I was born, the doctors were like trying to feel for my heart, and they were like, they didn't feel it, or it felt really weak. And then they got scared and they almost put me into like a bunch of these emergency things until one doctor came in and realized like, oh, it's just on the other side. So yeah, it's flipped a little bit.
Wow, but this is definitely the first time I heard about this. Yeah. I wonder like what percentage of like human beings on Earth have the similar kind of thing as you do.
Gonna be my question.
That's special. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's relatively rare. Not sure exactly, but I think it's like 1 in a million ish, maybe something like that.
Mm. Mm.
Wow.
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 Just got so many questions from what you were just saying. But I guess my first question will be, what made you move from Nepal to Costa Rica?
That's a great question. I think so. Probably because in Nepal, like luckily had like an amazing experience, had a really loving family, had like great friends. But I used to go to these like tournaments, like these sports tournaments called Fobasia,
Mm.
where we'd sometimes go to Thailand, like play like sports there, or like go to Malaysia, and it's like a little like sports thing. And I also did like MUN back in Nepal. We went to Qatar, like for an MUN conference. Like we used to go alongside, like around Nepal as well. And I realized I really liked meeting new people that were like very different. I
Mm.
guess like from like Nepal in many ways like its own small, at least like Kathmandu where I grew up, is like kind of a bubble. And
Yeah.
I always really liked to go get out. Like I wasn't even good at sports, but I still would try to go and make the team just because I wanted to go on this trip. And I kind of wanted to have an opportunity to do that again at like a longer period. And that's when I stumbled
Mm.
on the high school called United World College. Um, I really, really like the mission of it as well. I think a lot of like decisions that I make, I like, and I hope I continue this, is like very like mission driven. It's like, what does this get me? Not just me as a person, but like, what can this help, like, more like other people, hopefully, as a result of X experience that I have. Um,
Mm.
but honestly, like, the main reason was probably to meet like different people from different parts of the world, and going to Costa Rica was my best way to do so. My funny enough, my mom had actually applied to United World College as well when she was much younger. She
Oh.
didn't make it,
Mm.
but like she was always like, "Oh, I would love to like send my kid here," but she never pushed me. She never really pressured me to do it. She just kind of floated this opportunity, and I heard about it. And I was like, "Oh, please sign me up. I really want to go there." So ended up for that reason in Costa Rica. I spent 2 years, 3 years there for my high school, and it was really, really like formational. And it was, I would
Mm.
say, so one, go have fun because I liked traveling anyway, and I liked meeting new people anyway. And then two, I think it was just like I really, really liked the mission. It just felt like intrinsically like that's something I want to be involved in, or that's something I want to experience. So I ended up doing that.
And
Mm.
what was the mission of the high school?
Yeah, so after World War II, this guy Kurt Hahn, he basically had this idea. It's like, okay, there's so many problems in the world. So much of this is because of conflict, of different cultures, different backgrounds, and there's so much like turmoil. Um, so he thought, okay, if we create a school where there's a lot of people from all different walks of life, all different parts of the world, who live together for 2 years, or taught foundational like concepts essentially of like working together, like seeing beyond race, seeing beyond like ethnicity, seeing beyond nationality, and just like kind of really coordinating and doing a lot of things together. That
Mm.
would hopefully make for a better like world, because you get all these kids from a young age who like get to see that like, oh, we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love that mission. I think the mission statement is UWC is a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for a sustainable future, for a peaceful and sustainable future. I just thought that was really cool. I thought like I saw some videos as well. It seemed like very fun. It seemed very autonomous. I feel like you get a lot of freedom going to UWC, going to UWC
Mm.
Costa Rica in particular, I think. And yeah, that was very, very foundational for me. I think one of the big parts that I like at that point I didn't know. I was just like, oh, this sounds cool. Like a lot of different people from different parts of the world. It's awesome. Let's go. But retrospectively, like now looking back, I think that was one thing that it was super rare, like to find in other parts of my life now that I found there that
Mm.
I'll always cherish, which is it wasn't just like diverse as in various different countries, various different people. It was also like very socioeconomically diverse. So myself, like I got a scholarship to go there. Like a lot of kids were on scholarship, some were not, and like what you kind of get is like this entire proliferation of about 160 kids from like 70 countries sandwiched in this tiny
Mm.
place in Costa Rica, but everyone from a
Wow.
different socioeconomic background as well. So it creates like this really like fruitful, honestly, like diversity of thought and perspectives. Because it's not
Mm.
just X countries or Y countries, but it's like we all have had various different human experiences. And like now, when we move away from college, you kind of get to see how lives are different as a result of some of these things that younger you doesn't really
Mm.
recognize. But I think like the world's kind of current like system of the world that we live in, you can kind of these disparities become more obvious over time.
Yeah.
And I think like gave a ground for us all to meet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I was gonna ask, like, I feel like we're gonna dive a lot more into the like how the mission, like how it shaped you and your value, and I want to kind of take a step back and go a bit before. So I also left China to America when I was around your age, and I felt like just the world in China is just different. Like the city I grew up in China and the life I had with my friends was like so different. So I was just like wondering, like if you remember when you kind of left Nepal to come to Costa Rica, like what were some like main differences? Like what were some like moments you're like, wow, like this is so different? And then like small things like, oh, did you like really miss friends? Like did you as moments like feel like, oh, like I should have just like be at home versus like be at like a foreign country without like family and friends? Just yeah, just curious like that transitional stage in your life.
Yeah, I think honestly, I feel like I felt that more going from Costa Rica to college than I did
Mm,
from
Mm.
Nepal to Costa Rica. And I think it was because like in Costa Rica, we there was like 80 other kids from my class who came with me, and we had this shared experience. And when you're like sharing an experience with somebody, I feel like the good times are like they feel better, and the bad times also feel less bad because everyone else is experiencing it. Um,
Mm.
so I feel like I actually it was weird because I feel like I went to UWC that happened to be in Costa Rica, versus just like going to Costa Rica on my own.
mm-hmm.
I think the shared experience kind of dampened down some of the like homesickness aspects of it for me,
Mm.
and but like there were definitely a lot of like differences in my way of life. I think one was it was just a lot more open and free. Our school would actually just let us leave the campus at any time and
Mm,
come back at 1 a.m. At any time. We could take overnights, and it's like it was pretty interesting in that way. I think like getting that
Yeah.
level of freedom at a pretty young age. Um, and yeah, I think there was that aspect. There's also the aspect of like at home, everything is a lot easier, just because you're at home. Like for me, it was like, okay, I'm at home. Like I know my parents are here, my grandparents are here. We all live in the same place. And it was like, okay, there's always like everything I need is kind of around me. Whereas going to Costa Rica, it's like, oh no, like you kind of have to self-sustain a little more. There's less people like spoon feeding you. And that was a change to kind of get used to, but again, like dampened because everyone else was living that experience as well. So yeah, I think there was those elements. I think obviously the language was a big difference.
Mm.
But funny enough, I was pretty good at learning Spanish because that Nepali accent and the Spanish accent is relatively similar. Like, so I have some tips if anyone wants to learn languages that I learned in Costa Rica, that I still try to practice sometimes when I have to learn a new language. But yeah,
Mm.
differences, yes, but I think dampened by being with others who are also facing that.
Wow. Are you still in touch with some of your high school friends?
Yes. So this is the it's a good and bad part, I think. There's like
Mm-hmm.
the bad part is like all of my friends we dispersed, and there's some I haven't seen in like 7, 8 years now. The good part is anytime I go somewhere, because I never get a hotel ever. Like, 'cause it's like I always have
Oh,
someone that I know or a friend of a so I just crash on someone's couch and we reconnect, or they come to New York and we reconnect, and it's always like it always feels really good. So I really enjoy that. I think I've been able to stay in touch with the folks that come to New York or I go to their places, and that they happen to be there.
mm,
There's a lot of times where I'm like I go to their place and some UWC friends somehow also there, and we meet up and we spend like hours and hours just catching up. That's always really
yeah.
nice. But
Wow.
yeah, I actually started this thing as a result of like not being able to catch up with some of my friends, which is it's not a podcast, it's like a pod capsule is what I call it. So I would have a conversation with somebody, and then I would
Mm-hmm.
record it, and I would save it for like
Oh,
2 years, and then I would send it back to them 2 years later, and
oh,
we would both be listening to it,
wow.
and we do another one. So like kind of accumulating these like historical recordings of our conversations, to look back
Yeah.
on. It just kind of pushes us to more. But yeah, it's not.
that's
Mm,
so
I think we've
cool.
been good about it. but we try.
Yeah, that's really
That's really
cool.
cool. And then
Yeah.
I also didn't real like I kind of forgot about this. How is your English so good? Did you learn English in Nepal? Like, because I forgot that you like had to learn Spanish in Costa
Yeah.
Rica. So I'm just like, wow, like all these languages.
No, seriously, I don't know why I have an American accent. That's always been perplexing to me because I went to school in Nepal. I was like, there's a British school. Like all my teachers were British, so I should have a
Mhm.
British accent, technically. But I don't know. I somehow American. My mom speaks to me in English as well. Like,
Ooh.
so I think that helped me at least like learn English pretty fast early on.
Wait, so your
Uh,
mom knows
Mm.
English like fluently?
yeah, Nepal is actually really
How?
bilingual. Nepal's just super bilingual. She went to boarding school actually in Darjeeling, um,
Uh-huh.
which is
Whoa.
near India, and I believe she went to one of the like English-ish boarding schools. So she picked up English there, and then my dad also speaks English. Like it's like in Nepal, a lot of people actually speak English. It's very bilingual. So if you ever visit, like you don't need to know Nepali. English would be enough to get you around everywhere.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Wow, that's really intriguing. Never knew that. And speaking of Darjeeling, did you grow up like near mountains? Like, what was the environment where you were growing up? Like, was it a city? Like, more like, I don't know, like natural scene?
Yeah, it was a city, but it's like a natural-ish city, I guess, because it's a Kathmandu is the capital, and it's like a bowl. It's like there's
Mm.
hills all around, and then there's like a little bed, which is where the city is. But there's like houses on the hills as well. It's
Mm.
super nice. I think I like it. I like outside of Kathmandu more though. So if you are visiting, like recommend going to Pokhara, which is by the lake, super beautiful, and also some other obviously like near to mountain areas. But
Yeah.
where I lived was more so like the it's like a bowl shaped thing. It's kind of like this.
Mm.
Bounce
Oh,
around.
yeah, yeah. I think I know what that is. Wow, but it sounds like the place that you are growing up is very different from where you're living now in New York City. That doesn't have a lot of like nature. What made you to finally decide to move and currently settle in New York City?
Um, this is a great question because it's like there's like one. It is New York City. It's great. I think a lot of people aspire to want to live in the city like New York. I think I have as well. I have for sure as a kid, like ever since I was young. But there's also the other backdrop where it's like I work in crypto. So like, why do I live in New York, which is just like the most expensive place ever, when I could technically live in that are not like this. Um, and I toil with this a lot. I think about it a lot because I think there's one part. It's like, oh, I've always wanted to live in New York, but it's been 3 years
Mm.
now, and I'm relatively settled. At the same time, I feel like you can never feel fully settled in New York. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think this is my current reasoning of why I'm in New York. So I came because I had the dream to live in New York, but now I've been here for long enough that like that dream is not enough to keep me here. But what keeps me here, I think, is there's like a sense of drive in the city that I can't quite explain. Where like every single person that you meet is just like, I'm gonna make it. Like I'm gonna go and do something wild with my life. I don't know. I get that feeling a lot. That's definitely something I feel in
Mm-hmm.
other cities too. But in New York, it just feels amplified. I think it's good for certain
Mm.
reasons, like where I am in my life. Like it does motivate me somewhat. Um, but it's bad in the sense that like it stresses you out as well because everyone's like kind of
Mm.
always on. So I like New York the most when I leave it, honestly. But I do like staying here at this point in my life. So
Wow. That just sounds like some
You
lyrics,
like
you
New
know?
York the
Like
most.
it just you could be part of the lyrics
Yeah.
if one day you write a song of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
True,
And
I'm
just
down
like,
with
yeah. Always feels like a poem. Also, you're like forever chasing like the past, I guess, where just like you're
Mm.
chasing the not current moment. But I
yeah,
totally get that too.
yeah. It's definitely like fast paced. Jackie, you're here too, right? You're in New York.
Yeah. I totally get that. Just like everybody's a hustler,
Yeah.
but it's like, but it like makes you want to make something too. And I also feel that like sometimes I just like want to chill, but like you get stressed out, so like you already have to like develop your own strength to be like, I'm just gonna chill. Like I don't care about what other people are doing.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I think it's like it's really good like Kickstarter, but I think like the way to like fully hone it in is to have like intrinsic motivation. Like I can only be motivated by everyone else hustling around me so much, but like if I can figure out a way to internalize that, work for that motivation, which I try and learn.
Totally,
Work in
totally.
progress.
Yeah, so I guess what do you get your energies from nowadays?
Coffee.
How many do you drink a day?
It's a coffee. Gotta give credits to Mr. Caffeine. But I never really drank too much coffee, but now I think I'm slowly getting into it.
Ooh.
I drink yerba mate, which is the caffeine Argentinian drink thing.
Yeah.
But I think where I get it from mostly is I tend to find that like a lot of my motivations come from like the mission stuff. So it's really kind of like this like vague cloud of like what I want to be or what I would like to see the world being, and then any small bit and piece I can do in my daily life to get there. So the way I kind of source that energy is like I think talking to people who I admire. I get to do that a lot at work. Shout out OP Labs. I get to do that a lot like with people I speak to like within the industry that I'm in as well. Like I think people are very motivated and very like optimistic, and it's just nice to be surrounded by that. But also, I think it's by reading. I really, really enjoy reading. I didn't used to do it last year. I kind of skipped on it, and I picked it back up again this year. Reading really helps me kind of think to myself more. It helps me almost understand myself more, which helped me motivate myself more as well. Those are some of my main motivators. It's also like I think it's the kind of living with roommates helps, where I think we all kind of we're living this like roommate situation. Yes, like we're sharing this place in New York, like 24, and like okay, that's one part of it. But I think like the meta part, it's not like we talk about this out loud too much, but it's basically the meta part is whoa, like we're like getting into adulthood, like we're all trying to figure out what this whole life thing is, and we all have our like distinct different jobs, and like we're in different parts of the world's like workforce, and just like have different goals and different like backgrounds, but we're all kind of growing up together in this small little cubicle thing in New York. And I think that's a nice sign of a motivator to see like my motivation isn't like oh I have to become this person. It's more so like oh I want to be this. Sorry, it's not like I have to become this person tomorrow. It's more like oh I want to try better to be this person today, because like the philosophy behind that is like future is only a result of your present. So like I'm just trying to make sure that my today is as good and better than yesterday, and not be like, oh no, I'm not like a mega 100 CEO right now. Like my life is. I don't want to think like that. It's just like nice. I made my bed this morning. Like that's like smaller things that help you push. I think that's a nice motivator.
Oh my god, Binji, it just sounds so wholesome when I listen to this.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But let's take a step back before we look ahead. I also want to know like what you would like to become. But I just wonder, like the younger version of Binji, like what you're doing right now, is there something expected out of you? Or maybe tell us what you would like to become when you were younger.
So when I was, this is gonna take some background story, I think, and this is like
We're ready. We're ready.
Love
this
the
is one of
story.
those sentences. Do you guys watch The Office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that when
a
he's
little bit.
like, so this is gonna be one of those type of sentences where I start talking and I don't know where it's gonna end, but I'm gonna just keep going. It's like the Michael Scott way of speaking. But I think it needs some background, and the background is that when I was a kid, I like didn't speak. Like for like 10, 11 years of my life, I would not speak. I'd be super shy. I wouldn't speak to my own grandmother. I'd whisper to my parents. I talked to kids like in my school, but I'd be super shy. It's like some form of like young social anxiety, or my parents actually took me to see somebody because they were worried. This person diagnosed as selective mutism, where I would be mute towards certain people. So if I'm having dinner with my mom and her friends, and her friends' kids, I would get up out of the baby seat, like walk to my mom and whisper in her ear what I wanted. And this is how I lived for like a long time. And I can never fully diagnose like what caused that, honestly. But I can diagnose what fixed that. And I think a lot of that, like that pivotal moment really shaped every other outcome of my life. So I do think to answer your question in a short way, it's like, yes, I think looking back, if I was as self-aware as a kid and I was like saw myself now, I'd be like, oh yes, like that makes sense. um, but so what happened was like I wouldn't speak, and there was this public speaking competition in my class, and my teacher at the time, who's like lovely person, shout out Miss Fulton, she basically kind of pushed me to be like, hey, like you are good at writing, like you should try to do this speaking thing. And I think they probably back channeled my dad somehow, and my dad was also encouraging me, and he was a great help. He like really like I wrote this thing, and then he like recorded me, and we'd like go back and forth, and I grew my confidence that way, and it was really like I think it kind of shines the light on how like when you're young, if you have an adult that can like motivate you, just like be like, hey, yeah, let's keep trying, let's do another one, let's do better. Like it really helps with confidence. So I picked up this confidence, and I gave this public speech, and I ended up winning the class one. And then I was like pushed to do the same speech in front of an entire audience, like the whole auditorium, which was probably like 120 people, but at the time it probably felt like 10,000 because I was just petrified. Um, but I went up on the podium and I gave the speech, and I won that one as well, and like, people loved it, and they're like, "Oh, boy, that was great." And I think so that was one big push for me to gain confidence, and I think it helped me like realize that like you can very much manifest things. Like if you like believe that you are capable of doing something and have enough people around you can push you to that. Like not just say you can do it, but say like, oh, if you work, like do this, like you can get there. Which is what I think my dad did. It helped me get confidence, which then was like a big factor I think in every other part of my life, like growing up, that I was able to obtain. And I think the other thing, which is very clear as to like why I do what I do right now, is the speech itself that I wrote was titled like "Be Happy with What You Have," and it was about how like people who have a lot of money are super unhappy, and you should find like the little things in life, and like your family, and focus on things around you to like source your happiness. I don't know how I came up with that as an 11-year-old, but like that was kind of like that kind of was a backdrop of a lot of things that I did after. And yeah, I always joke that I didn't speak for the first like 10, 11 years of my life, so I'm making up for it now. So why this
Yes,
lengthy
you
answer is
are.
me making up for
You
11
are.
speech. But so that happened, and that was a big catalyst. I think the other catalyst was going to Costa Rica, like seeing people from various different parts of the world face various similar struggles. Oddly, right? Like I had a problem with like money transfer. My friends had problems with inflation. Like my friends had problems with money transfer as well. Like we'd raise like
Mm.
crowdfundings for some of our friends get tickets to come to Costa Rica or go to their back to their house for summer. And it was like, whoa, like massive problem there. Like crypto fixes that, right? Like Bitcoin fixes this kind of meme. But like really experiencing that, like I think a lot of my friends actually had to use crypto to an extent to even get money in Costa Rica, because it's already hard to kind of receive money or send money from the U.S. to another country. It's significantly harder to send it from another country to a place like Costa Rica right now. So it really showed like the usefulness of crypto. That kind of drew me towards these ideas and like the philosophy behind like just more fairness, more openness, more transparency, retroactively rewarding people who like did good. I think part of that was myself. Like I wanted to go. I was like aspirational in the sense that I wanted to go to a great college after high school, and like I want to do all the things that would help me get there. So I went to like MUN. I did like some like entrepreneurship business thing, but I didn't do as much of like community service. I didn't do as much like cleaning the beach and cleaning the streets, because for me, my incentive model, or like what I thought the colleges would want to hear, is much more like business and like you did this entrepreneur thing.
Mm.
And looking back, like that's just like a failed system, because like I probably would have had more fun doing the community things. I probably would have like actually helped a real person more. And I didn't do that because there was no incentive to do it. So like some of the concepts of retroactive funding, which I really like, is rooted from that, I think. So a lot of these like small experiences kind of laddered up into what I do today, and I think that's what. So if I were to ask my kid self, and I had like enough reasoning, then I would be like, yeah, that makes sense. That fits.
This is so beautiful. Like, literally, like, I guess I just want to take a moment and say your story is just like, I mean, we like dubbed this podcast like Journey of the Unordinary, but it's really like we know you. I met you in this bar, and then but I'm just like hearing your story, and then it just sounds so inspirational. But like it's also like you grew up like everybody just grew up from a child, and then you're shaped by your experience, and you have like certain aspiration and ideals. I don't know. I'm just like I guess trying to enjoy this moment of like being inspired by Binji and just really enjoying hearing about the story that how you grew up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe we can also look ahead. So, Binji, we know that you're currently enjoying what you're doing. And you mentioned a lot about the mission. Like, what is your kind of personal mission? I would say in life it's so heavy to think about it, but what what do you want it to be like in 1 year or maybe in 3 years time? What is that mission and what makes you feel achieved or maybe fulfilled?
Yeah, I think one thing definitely something I've been like trying to vocalize more. So this is gonna be a little messy, I think, but like the idea that like talent is scarce, like there's not a lot of talent, is so wrong in my opinion. Like I think there's abundant talent in the world. I think there's like humans are capable of so many incredible things, and every human's kind of capable of at least one thing that they're incredible at, no matter what that thing is. I think so. Talent is scarce. I think that's a false statement. So what I kind of like think about is like talent is not scarce, opportunity is. Like I think there's a lot of potential in the world that can kind of make the world incredible, but I think not a lot of that potential gets the opportunity. And that could be a result of like where you're born or like your social status or like your socioeconomic conditions. And I think there's a lot of, or your access to things like information. And I think like we're making progress as humans generally towards like opportunity. Like I think there's more opportunity for people of different backgrounds in the world now than there were like 50 years ago. I think there's more opportunity for every individual in the world to learn more as a result of the internet. But I still think there's a long way to go until we actually like fully unlock opportunity, and that's kind of what I want to do. I don't think I want to. I don't know if my like life goal is to like fix something directly. Maybe it is. I mean, it could be right. Like, not gonna not promise that, but I think what I want to do is like create the tools through which others can gain an opportunity to then fix things. Jing,
Mm,
who's the founder of Optimism, like, she said this one thing in an OP Radio episode, which really struck me a lot, where a technology is only as powerful as the wielder. Like the technology is a very neutral thing. Like a blockchain is a very neutral thing. It's what people build on a blockchain that like ends up, being good or bad. So I think like I want to, but what the neutral thing allows is for people to do something else, and whether that's something good or bad is like second question. But I think like the ability to kind of enable someone to do something that they previously could not have can be good if done correctly and if given to the
yeah,
right builders. So
yeah.
I that's a really like vague concept, but I think it's something along the
No.
lines of like, providing opportunity,
No.
um, however that might.
Yeah, I think just based on everything you said about the background and how you grew up and going to like high school and the things that you're doing now and also the mission that you were talking about, I just feel like everything is connected and super consistent. I think because of your background and that makes you think different from like a lot of what other people are thinking and that makes you want to do what you're doing now. So I'm glad to learn all about this from you.
Yeah, thank you. I like it because I think I'm fortunate for like having the freedom to shape the way I work with like myself in the sense that I think we're very lucky to be working in crypto because it's very open to kind of like an individual being able to bring their individualness to it. Like I think like inherently like the fact that people like even in crypto is like that's kind of contradictory anyway. So even within it, you
Mm,
can kind of carve your own like way of thinking. So I think that a big reason as to why I've been able to like be here and like say this like confidently, being like yes, like I think I'm providing more opportunity. I think that's the goal that I'm doing, and I think even working right now with optimism is like pushing me towards that a little bit more. And I think it's a result of like being able to work in crypto. I think in other parts in other industries, and not to shit on other industries, but like I think it's more to be like, yeah, like this is my broad vision for the world, and like this I'm doing it every day. I think it's hard to do that in other parts. So, shout out Satoshi.
Yes.
so many
All
shout
right.
outs.
So I I know. I said before that later on we're gonna dig into kind of your mission, your ideals, and I'm going to do that right now. I saw in your LinkedIn profile you were talking about you wanna end, ending financial martyrdom through retroactive funding secured by the new internet. And I've thought that this is like a really powerful statement of your job at Optimism, but also it's a quite vivid, I guess, description like financial martyrdom. So I you kind of alluded to this earlier before, like in high school, where you and your friends like need to crowdsource fund a trip back home, and then crypto kind of came to be one of the vehicle, I guess, for that. So I wonder if you can dig a little deeper into the concept of financial martyrdom, like how did you develop that, and how are you viewing it, and how you kind of want to like solve it, maybe through your role at OP or just like you yourself with your friends together.
Yeah. So I think I've like since tweeting that, I think I've changed a little bit like the wording. I still agree with the whole thing, but it's like I want to update that, edit that to be like
Upgrade.
social like socio-economic martyrdom, I think. And it goes back to the example of like me being in high school, wanting to get into a good college and optimizing to get to that college by joining these businessy clubs. Like the martyrdom in that sense was me giving up what I really wanted to do, which is like beach cleanups, to do this like entrepreneurship
Mm.
because I thought this would end up in a better payout. In this case, the payout was university. Um, and like looping that into like giving people opportunity is like, what if we can create a world where we can give people opportunity for doing what they truly want to do and not what they're trying to optimize this socioeconomic value for. That would make them happier. That'd probably make them better at doing it. So I think that's one of the concept like foundational concepts. I think what optimism does with like retroactive funding kind of plugs in pretty well with that because you're kind of like giving back to people who made something that they didn't think they'd make money in. So you can kind of create this world where like mapping that to universities, like what if universities say like, oh, we'll actually like also like if people do community service, that would actually be weighted as much or if not maybe even more than if someone did entrepreneurship club. Then like more people do community service, maybe people will learn skills that they truly want to learn, instead of just like trying to optimize the resume bullet point. So I think that was like ending financial martyrdom or ending socioeconomic martyrdom for doing the right thing is essentially like how can you, and by the right thing it doesn't have to be like someone's mandating like Jackie, like this is the right thing, you have to do it. It's not that per se. It's like what you truly want to do is the right thing for you, like what it's your inner calling is the right thing to you, and you should not feel like you have to sacrifice that to get like to chase after this other thing that maybe doesn't feel right to you but it's what pays the bills, um, or like gives you the reputation that you want within the society. Like that sort of stuff happens, and I think it kind of inhibits people from fulfilling their full potential, um, and like doing what they truly love and living lives that are more full, for themselves. And I think the last part of that, like by the new internet, it comes in because like in some ways people can argue that like the blockchain is a new internet, like on chain is the new online, etc. Like it's kind of, it allows for a record, it allows for a more transparent way to do that, it allows for people to kind of like be able to attest and verify that they did this thing, because obviously like if that isn't there then people can just like game the system. But I think that the secured part is by the new internet, and I think like sure we could use like blockchains and tech stuff for it as well, which it helps, but I think innately like the message is like how can you create a realm of existence where like people can actually do what they love and be fine, like not feel like there's an opportunity cost for it.
Wow. Well, just echoing what Chu said earlier. So wholesome and everything's so connected. Like this reminds me of what you were saying about there's not a scarcity of talent, but a scarcity of opportunity. Because it's just like everyone is born with their talent and with their inner calling. And we should be allowed, like, we should build a society that enables us to go pursue what we were made to do or what we think we want to do versus like what this we think the society want us to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
agreed.
Okay.
Yeah,
One
like
more deep question, I guess, along this line of thought. Same thing. Saw on LinkedIn. In the about section, you want to one unlock finance via cryptocurrency, two unlock execution via AI, and three unlock borders via DAOs. I just want to dig deeper. In the interest of time, I want to pick number three because
Mhm.
I personally struggle with visa and paperwork all the time with like these like going to different countries' borders and stuff. So I really look forward to a world in my lifetime where I can unlock borders by Dao. Like that would be amazing. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think there's two types of borders. One is the mental border, um, and the other is like the physical border. So I think one, the mental border is like, or the social sphere, like unseen border is like, oh, like I can't do this because I'm like from this race because like there's racism and inequality for like people and people don't get opportunities because of a certain race and they're discriminated against. Like that's like a social thing. It could also be like, oh, like I can't do this because it doesn't pay. Like sort of some of the concepts we talked about earlier. Um, so that's one social side. I think and then the physical side is like, oh, I live in this place and like I don't live in Hollywood, so I can't be a successful artist. Um, I think with DAOs, what DAOs kind of allow you to do is like and I will preface all of this by saying there is no perfect DAO today. I think the concept of being able to build a DAO in its own is like a massive societal unlock because like the only people that could innovate within governance was like kings or governments or monarchs and stuff. But
I
now
guess
in the
maybe for those who are listening that don't know DAO, what is a DAO?
Yeah, so a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, which is like a mouthful and a half. And I think like what I would try to explain it as instead would be it's imagine a subreddit that had value. Like you can like share value within that subreddit. So you can create a bunch of people who have a similar goal and set up like certain laws and stuff that you all agree on, and then like be able to share value with each other with these principles that you've all been able to adopt. Another example is like I think like it's like oh, and it's decentralized, so like everyone kind of has a voice within it, and everyone can change that and vote, and it's just more open, and everything's done transparently on a blockchain, which is actually all transparent. Um, and what actually explained this concept to somebody, and they said, but like when there's a football game or something, there's like a referee, and it's just fine to just have one referee that enforces the laws, and that's why the game is fair. Otherwise, like if all the players are enforcing the laws, people are going to disagree, and then the game will never end. And I think one of the ideas to think about there is referees have to do the right thing, right? Like a referee has to give a red card if something's visibly bad, because if they don't, they get fired the next day. So that's fine. Like the referees will always be fined in a sports game. But when you think of like governments and like more like larger bureaucratic organizations, it's like they can afford to mess up because the only way to kind of fix that is like a long like bureaucratic process. And I almost think that's a feature, not a bug, to kind of maintain the order and stuff. But like within DAOs, you can have more open disputes faster because everyone's kind of an owner of the system in which they operate in. So I think like that was kind of a tangent. But when we think of unlocking like borders through DAOs, it's like you can unlock the mental border of oh, I can never do this thing because I'll never have the opportunity to, because you can join a DAO that does that thing, and you can do that with other people and sharing that value that's created. And physically, it's like oh, I can never be a successful artist because I'm not in Hollywood. Well, like the internet already kind of unlocks that, but DAOs kind of ensure that even if that's unlocked, it's financially secure, so you're not getting like messed over by someone else. Um, so that's kind of one of the ways. I think also the real power of crypto is that an idea can spin up. So someone can be like, I like this idea. And then 20 other people can be like, I like this idea too. You start a DAO, people put money in if they need to, people set laws in if they need to. You create smart contracts around that DAO that can help govern it. And then you can kind of like actually make that idea come to reality. And that's like borderless, like no one, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter who you are. Like you can choose to work at a DAO sometimes and help a little bit, or you can choose to work full time. And it's not like a job per se that you have to apply to and get like all these papers for. So yeah, I hope that made sense. I was kind of like definitely an emerging concept, I think, but I'm very excited for what it can do, what they can do.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think I was kind of more presuming that it was about like just traveling, but what you say kind of makes a lot of sense. It's like more about again going back to kind of the opportunity and talent and like resource and I guess being happy. Like all these things are so connected. It's more than that, like what you were describing about breaking that mental kind of border as well.
I have a follow-up question. Do you think the current DAOs are sort of doing what you were describing, or or maybe tell us what you think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the current DAOs are moving towards that, but I think the current DAOs face I'm saying this sitting in my room, like I'm not building the DAO or anything right now, so it's very easy for me to be like, yes, like this is the ideal reality, but then like to get to that reality, there's a bunch of different steps and there's a bunch of different factors. And I think that's what DAOs are realizing. I think a lot of DAOs have like their big vision of what they want to do, but like on executing that vision, they realize like, oh, people are difficult to work with sometimes. Like, oh, there's like time zone constraints. There's these like smaller things that do come up, and I think DAOs are in the middle of figuring that out right now. But I think like I'm just happy that DAOs exist. I'm not going to say there's a perfect DAO right now. Like every DAO is an experimental thing. Like every DAO is trying to do different ways to do it, and I think the real power lies in the fact that not the fact that DAO X is better than DAO Y, but I think the real power lies in the fact that DAOs can even exist. I think the fact that you can even create something like this where you can share value on the internet with dozens of people across the world, no matter where they are, on a shared mission that you all agree on and can vote on and have a say on, is like the biggest power. And I think the way that's executed will be an iterative process. I like some of the governance talks happening within the L2s because I feel like those are very fast moving. Those have been more iterative. It's been exciting to see some of that stuff. But I think it's definitely a work in progress. I can definitely not like the DAO vision that I would say I have personally is far from being fully realized. But that's because it's like a vision, and it's not like I'm not doing it on the day to day. I think the DAOs that exist today are actually doing it. So they, it takes more time than like.
Yeah, totally. I guess moving to another tangent, how is Binji different at work and outside of work? I've seen like the version of Binji at work. I also want to know like, is that different or is it? Yeah.
Uh, I think it's similar. I think I'm like funnier outside of work. Maybe that's what I don't know. Maybe I'm just not funny at all. I don't know though. I try. I try. I think I try to be the same. Like I feel like it'd be easier. I don't. I think I do a terrible job of having two different personas. To be honest, like I think some people
Mm.
do it really well, and like that's super cool. I wish I could do it, but I can't. I feel like I just have to be Bingy 24/7. So it's just like what environment, what is like the Bingy is the constant, but then like what environmental factors interacting with the Bingy changes that. But like I think generally
Oh,
like
that's
my core
cute.
persona is pretty similar. I think I am pretty similar at work and outside of work, except that I don't talk too much about crypto outside of work because my friends would hate me. So I think
I don't
Oh.
I
know.
think
I see these screenshots on Twitter about your text still talking about Twitter, like talking about crypto.
this is fair. This is fair. Yeah, so I'm online dating on like Hinge and stuff in New York, and I've my dreaded thing is when they ask me like what I do per se. Like, not because I'm like not proud of what I do, but I just use the statement like, oh, I work in crypto. Like right now in this current realm of the like this timeline, this arc of crypto's journey, it's like, oh no, he's scamming people. So I'm like, I work in
Mm.
it's funding. That's what I work in.
Mm.
So
So
I
you're
feel like
like, you don't even mention crypto.
yeah, no. Eventually, I asked them to buy my coin. I'm kidding.
When you get there, how do you explain crypto to non-crypto people?
Dude, it's actually so good. I think everyone in crypto who's single should go and date for the sake of the industry because it'll make you like realize like, oh wait, I can you're really good at it. You're really really good at it. I think it's honestly helped my job. Like yeah, so I think I tend to go with like what are things that crypto can solve, but not directly. Like I don't feel comfortable saying crypto fixes this because if it could fix this, it would have fixed it already, and it hasn't. Right? Like frankly, we're not there yet. But I think the way I try to lead into it is like, what if you had the chance to like innovate in areas that humans were restricted from innovating in before? Like, what if you could innovate in incentive structures? like social incentive structures for society as a whole. And you can have like launch these series of experiments, and like doing so, like yes, there will be some bad ones, that there'll be some drugs and all of that, but the real power is in the ability to do it. Like the ability for you to be like, this is a economic design that I want to try out to create and give to people around the world, as an option, is like the most powerful thing that crypto has. And the exact execution of it, it depends. Like that's not always gonna be good, but like it's a neutral ground through which you can create that. So I talk about that, and I talk about like public goods funding. Like, isn't it cool that like people who do things that are good for everyone can get paid? Like, that would be a sick world. Imagine if all the people who like go and do humanitarian stuff around the world were like millionaires. Like, that would just be a better place. Like, imagine a world where like people who are super smart, like just graduating college, are not forced to go and optimize for like whatever career will pay them the most money, but the career that they love and that they want to do. And I think that's a result of like being able to create these incentive mechanisms, mixing like economics and governance and experimenting within those realms to kind of prove these models out, and create this world you can opt into. So that's kind of my general pitch. I think I say it in different ways, and I don't say it all at once. That's for sure. But like,
I was just about to ask, how did
like,
how does it resonate with the the dates?
I'm still really single, so I don't think it's resonating, guys. Honestly, I could use some advice. I don't work it out. I might have to pivot to AI or something. Um,
Don't worry, you can improve your pitch every single day. You can improve the pitch,
yeah,
and one day you
but
get there.
I'm, I'm convinced though that every single person in crypto should go on dates and try to explain, because it'll help for the industry, for the sake of the industry. Like a little,
Oh my
like
god.
you asked me the question like, how is G different from like Binji at personal life? Like my previous role at Optimism was developer advocate, so I really take that seriously. I'm always advocating, you know. But yeah.
Evangelizing optimism and retro grant on dates.
Love that. Love that. Well, yeah, Binji, I'm like, because we work in the same industry, I know there's so many things happening around us all the time, but you seem to be the person who is always up to date. Tell us, how do you keep yourself up to date?
I think by being chronically online. I think
What a word! Chronically online.
it's chronically online. Like, that's my answer. That's my whole answer. Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's also like I feel lucky in the sense that when I started at Optimism, my role was literally like, okay, we have mainnet live, and now we need teams to deploy on this thing. So I was like talking to a lot of different types of people. So I made like friends within all of these different types of people, and I just like kind of get information from them, and yeah, that's probably how I try to stay on top of it. But honestly, the real answer is like chronically online for sure.
Mm. But
That's
how does it do to your, like, how does it do to you mentally? Because I personally will struggle being chronically online and not switching off. But yeah, I I wonder how does it do to your like mental health, which maybe is energizing to you. But yeah, I just want to hear like how you're dealing with that.
I think I've become more conscious about it. I think earlier I was like very much prone to being super excited about a lot of things that would keep me going. But you realize like at one point you can't really keep doing that. Like you can't rely on that. And it can get toxic. I think at points I was like definitely feeling burnout, because it's like my brain is kind of in all this different context thing, and it's like, like where do I go? Like what am I doing? Like am I doing anything really, or am I just like kind of everywhere, like trailing around? And I think like the way I have been trying to fix that is by reading a lot more and just like spending time with myself, where it's not like, because in the past it's like very much like consume content, consume content, consume content. And then I actually like Twitter kind of helped me a bit, because I started putting out content. Like I started just like throwing my thoughts out, and it seemed that people were actually receiving that. I was like, oh wait, okay, interesting. I can actually like create content. That's wild. And that realization was a bit better for my mental health, where I wasn't just like consume, 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 but I was also like create, create, create. And I kind of got rid of the mental barrier of like, people are going to judge me, or people are going to think this, people are going to think that. It's like, no, like no one's really thinking about me. Like really, like, that's humbling experience, in that sense. Like, so I think that has pushed me to be better. But I do think that's something that's a work in progress where I'm trying to like push myself to tune out more, push myself to just spend more time on, you know, myself as well. Because I think that actually is like fairer for other people. It's actually it allows me to help other people more if I can help myself like get more mental bandwidth freed up. Um, but yeah,
I consume your content. So thank you for creating your content.
like don't
And
be scared.
another another tangent. What would you say your superpower is?
Um, I think the superpower I would say to relate to like the conversation in general would probably be that I tend to find that I end up in the right place because the route of where I end up is mission driven, which means like I never find that I'm stuck in a place, and if I do, I like get out as soon as possible in a place where I don't believe in the long term impact of what I do for like my goal of like providing opportunity to people. I think if I like my superpower is like being able to push myself to be within pockets of the world that allows me to live
Mhm.
life where I'm like, okay, like yes, it's work. Like, oh, I have to get on these like 10 back-to-back calls right now. But it's like, oh, it's fine because I'm working towards this vision that also coincides with my own. And I think like the superpower comes from that. Like, maybe it's not superpower, but it's like where I get my energy from that then
Mhm.
allows me to do
Mm.
things. So yeah, I feel really fortunate to have like kind of done that, or like been within that realm. I almost think about it as like a form of public goods funding for my own like my own mental health in a way. It's like I'm like kind of like the fact that I can like work within this industry and do like the job that I do is like almost like would not have been possible 10 years ago, but it is now, and it's kind of cool that way. And I feel fortunate to be able to find myself in
Yeah.
those regions and those parts
Yeah.
Everything it's coming
of
back
society.
all together. Yeah.
We're living in a
So is it right to say that because you have a mission and that's how you can get to the right place at the right time? Because clearly, I think a lot of people, or maybe sometimes just like ourselves, can feel stuck in a place. And yeah, so do you think having a mission or having a goal is making you to move around quickly and be at the right place?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, but I think it's not necessarily like a very like, it's not like a very like direct goal in the sense that it's not like, oh, I am going to be this specific person at this specific time, but it's more like I'm chasing after this specific feeling, like
Mm.
long term, but like, sorry, I'm chasing after this kind of like general thing, sorry, long term, but I'm optimizing for this specific feeling in the short term that I know will help me get there. So it's like, I want to push myself in like present day. It's like what can I do in my present day to get the feeling that I think will help me most get help the world ideally go to that general mission.
I
But
I have two follow-up question with
yeah,
that then. So like it sounds quite vague, like when you say like just put yourself have a mission, have a goal, and then just put yourself in the right place. Because in my mind, what keeps happening is like you're at a happy hour, a bar or something, and you're in a conversation, and then you're like, okay, this doesn't fit my goal. I don't know, or my vibe of the night. I want to get out. So then I get out. Like, but I feel like that's too specific of examples. I want to know more of a concrete example of like day to day. How do you like actually beyond like a bar saying like how do you carry out like, oh, I want to do things that advance my, I guess, my mission, my life goal. And then so that's one thing. And then another thing, I just like sometimes I feel like when people have like a very specific goal, they're quite they can be like quite intense, but I feel like you're very chill for like a better words. I don't feel like you're like, let's go, 1, 2, 3, this is what we have to achieve in this hour.
yeah,
But yeah, like you're yeah, so I just like wonder how do you yeah, like any thought on that? Like you're not very intense, but you have a very clear goal, but like not very intense, I guess. Yeah, sorry. Two
yeah.
two questions there.
So I think in terms of like how I the day to day is like treating everything as something that'll help me get to the next thing, this larger goal, and like it doesn't always have to be positive. Like I could have a terrible conversation, and I could be like, that was great because now I had a terrible conversation and I know what that's like now. Like I experienced it. Like I have a fantastic conversation. That's also great because it's like I have this thing now. Like how does that map to like what I like? I learned something out of every experience. So I think it's in that sense it's okay regardless. Like I would never be like, oh no, like I'm gonna run away from this unless it's truly bad. But generally, even if I do run away, it's like, oh okay, mental mapping, like run away from those things, learn, don't do it next time, go. So I think that's like the day to day side because it's definitely hard to be like, okay, there's this big large goal. We're all trying to like save the world, but like every single thing I do doesn't always feel like that because like day to day life stuff gets in the way, and like that's just how the world works, and that's just how work works as well. But I think it's just knowing that everything that you do is an experience that you learn that can then help if you map it correctly. It can like, kind of help you in the future of like, oh, okay, at least I have this experience that hopefully will help shape my view of things. But that's also kind of a little vague. I think more. Um, Generally it's like the framework that I use in my head that helps me get to a thing. It's not necessarily like a specific like this and this equals that, but it's like okay, like this is the general framework that I want. This is like the laws of physics that I kind of map my life around. Like this is like my gravity. This is my oxygen. Like whatever. Um, and one of those ones, especially with like goals, is I want to train my brain to be better at really understanding the component pieces that lead to a conclusion than being able to understand a conclusion. Because I think if I'm just say like, oh, I'm very good at understanding like what this end goal is, and then I get very biased towards that end goal, and that also pigeonholes me to ideas of different end goals that may actually be better. But because I was so fixed on this one, like and because I never looked at the components that we would like, never really studied and understood the components of what gets to a conclusion in the first place, I kind of like I could fall into this trap of like, oh, like this is the only way the world can be. Like, I'm in this meeting and it's not really helping. Like, what am I doing like here? Versus being like, okay, like every single thing I do is kind of a component heading towards that, and I should learn from those components and reuse those components, like not use those components, but it's like I have to focus on that. So like helping focus on like the present, like day-to-day things that map to your larger goal is helpful because it kind of makes sure that you don't pigeonhole yourself and those around you towards like your vision, because it's more like that vision is growing. It's like things change. Like maybe it turns out differently. Maybe it's as good versus like me never studying the components and then a conclusion happening and me being like, what? How did that happen? um,
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that makes like a little bit of
Yes,
sense. I definitely
what? Yeah, it does.
that I'm trying to learn a bit more from like some of these like kind of rationalist way of thinking, I guess, that I'm currently like trying to read into. So a lot of this is like coming from books that I've read as well.
I really like this way of thinking because, like, say even if you have a bad day, even you're stressed, then you think about it on the other side, which is, oh, I learned that I don't like it, and I learned that this is probably not something I want to pursue. So it helps you to look at things from the brighter side and just makes you like calm and happy regardless. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this is like a really out there dream that I've like it's not like a dream like I'm aspiring for. It's like literally
Hit
like I
us.
slept
Hit us.
and woke up. But this is a dream of this future, right? Like basically AI is there, like this AGI, and it does all the work in the world. Like humans don't need to work anymore. No one who doesn't want to work has to work. There's
Possibility.
widespread UBI. There's widespread UBI. Everyone's getting paid. Everyone can live however. But then so everyone in the world has enough money to meet their like basic ish needs, right? Like that's all sorted. But there's still gonna be this ability to get rich and like or like be wealthy, whatever. But the way like it works today is like you get wealthy by like doing certain things that society kind of like values higher for some reason economically, and then you become rich that way. But in this dream reality, it's like the wealthiest people are the people who are the happiest. So like the way you get super rich is just like being as happy as possible like every single day of your life, and you can do whatever it takes to get happy. But like it's like everyone in the world just like, oh my god, when you wake up you're like, okay, how can I make money? It's like, how can I make this day the best day ever? So everyone's just out there like chasing the best life they can, because like as they get more happy their bank account gets bigger or something. Um, and I think like trying to live in that world to an extent without going wild and like losing like reality, touch of reality, is helpful a little bit. Where every day's great because I'm alive and I exist, and that's just wild anyway to begin with. So like I want to try to make sure that I see the good in every situation that I'm in as much as I can, and just take something away from everything. Like I think the worst situations aren't the situations that are bad. I think the worst situations are the ones that you don't take anything out from, whether it's good or bad. Because then you're just living in like complacency where you're just like, oh, I'm just like breathing in and out like the whole time, not really experiencing. And yeah, some people make the argument that like the meaning of life is to experience as much as possible. And I think to an extent I agree. Yeah, and I think it can be good experiences and bad experiences. Like, ideally good, but I think the fact that you can even like experience to begin with is beautiful. So it's like, how can we experience and like be in the present moment when we are experiencing it as well?
But
Yeah.
okay, but like people also say this is like a more thought process thing. But like if you wake up and just be happy, that can't be a thing because without sadness, you don't really know what happy is.
Yeah.
So there's like another, I guess, school of thought or whatever you want to call it,
Oh.
which is like the ultimate goal is not to be happy or not happy, it's to be stable. It's just like
Yeah.
you don't want to do this, you don't want to do like you don't want to go up or like the bottom, but just like be stable. So it made me think about that when you were saying about like, oh, wake
Yeah.
up, be happy. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe wake up, be happy.
Mm,
It's not a thing because you don't know what happiness is.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like you wake up to be, and that's it. You end the
To be,
sentence.
love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is beautiful. Yeah. I guess in the interest of time, we're coming to an end of the podcast. And Binji, where can people learn about you or learn more about you?
Farcaster, shout out Farcaster, 100%. That's like it's the best, and it's just like really interesting of what it can be. So hopefully I look back in this and be like, I was early to Farcaster. It's just fascinating to me that like you can create this social web that you can create different front ends for. I could speak forever about that, but Farcaster for sure. Twitter Binji underscore X. Farcaster is just Binji. I think those would probably be the best ones. Yeah. I want to start writing more, so you'll see me on Mirror as well. And yeah, but mainly it'll be Farcaster and Twitter if you want to get in touch for sure. And conferences of crypto and different like AI-ish events in New York and all that too. Guys, thank you so much. This was super nice. I always like it's funny because like you don't really think about yourself until people are asking questions about yourself. And I think like generally I took as much away from this chat as like anyone else listening to did about myself. Like I think I learned a lot. Just by being have these questions. So these questions are awesome. Thank you for like
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks
And
for, yeah.
do you want us our listener to give you any feedback? Like how can they help you?
yeah. I think anything that I've said that you are like agreeing with or disagreeing with, I would love to learn and about your opinion. I think it's like all the things that I'm saying is just like me in this current moment of like September 23rd, 2023, having lived these like inputs and within my life so far that like have got me to these conclusions. But I believe there's always room to kind of learn and grow and change my mind. Strong opinions, loosely held, is how we kind of operate within optimism as well, which has been a nice frame of thinking for me.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Binji. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Journey of the Unordinary. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are listening right now. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy the podcast, please share it. If you like our conversation, please help rate it and give us a review so others can discover the podcast and join us on the same adventures.
Join us next time as we carry out intimate conversations with our unordinary guests to discover their journeys to where they are today. See you next week!